Listening to WCEG Network. We are the worldwide community empowerment group. We speak life into the community. Log on to WCEG Watch us live on your smart TV, Roku cable channel, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I am your host, Attorney Melanie LaGrone, host of Beyond the Border, where today, for the next hour, we are going to talk about all things immigration. Subscribe free to our YouTube channel, WCEG Network. Like us on Facebook and Instagram. Connect with us on LinkedIn, TikTok, and Threads. Download our free WCEG mobile app. Alexa, play WCEG Talk Radio. Listen to WCEG on any of the 12 podcast distribution platforms. And last but not least, our disclaimer. The topics and opinions are those of the show hosts and the guests and not WCEG Network. And thank you again for your continued support. So, good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Hello, Mr. Williams. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. And yourself?
I am wonderful. I am wonderful. All right. So, everyone, as you know, usually my show is all about immigration. So, we usually talk about different aspects of immigration, policies, procedures, things like that that's going on in today's crazy immigration world. But today, we're going to be a little bit more focused. All right. We are going to talk about something that a lot of people don't talk about: human trafficking. And with January being Human Trafficking Awareness Month, this was a perfect month for me to have Mr. Victor Williams on our show because he is the CEO and founder of Quest to Freedom, which is a human trafficking awareness and education nonprofit. And he's got a lot of history and background in this area. And so I'm so excited for him to be here. So thank you so much, Vic. And I'm going to call him Vic because he's my friend. So thank you so much, Vic, for being with me this morning. How are you?
I'm great. And can I call you Mel?
You can call me Mel. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So why don't you start out with telling everyone your background, who you are, and why you started Quest to Freedom?
So my name is Victor Williams. I'm a retired special agent with Homeland Security Investigations. I am the vice chair of the Miami-Dade Human Trafficking Coalition, and I'm the CEO and founder of Quest to Freedom, an anti-human trafficking organization aimed at educating communities on the culture of human trafficking, um, working on our emergency transitional services that I'll talk about later, and most important, our strategic partnerships, because in this space, nobody operates alone.
And so explain, Vic, what did you do when you were with HSI? Explain what.
So the last 8 years of my career with HSI, I worked human trafficking, and it changed me as a human being. Um, what got me was I had come to the group after leaving the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force for 4 years. I had an opportunity to go to Botswana, Africa, um, at the International Law Enforcement Academy when I first got my first training in human trafficking. When I got back to the States, I went back to HSI and I got assigned to the human trafficking unit where one of my partners was working a case of like 8 women that were trafficked from Mexico. And we had to keep these women detained because for material witnesses, because at that moment they were saying that they weren't trafficked. And we didn't understand all of this. And maybe we'll get into that later. But to make a long story short, the men that had trafficked these women were going to go to trial because the women were saying they weren't trafficked. And then we found out that one of the women in the group was part of the trafficking family that was keeping all the women afraid. So once we pulled her out, all the women came clean, and now the men pled guilty, and now we're at sentencing when this first woman gave her impact statement that changed my life. And she talked about them taking her at the age of 14. They had trafficked her for 12 years, and they put her in a trailer along the fields where people were picking the fruits and vegetables that we buy in the stores. And so these men didn't go home, take showers after leaving those dirty fields. They went into that trailer where I don't even use the word sex anymore, where she was raped 15 to 25 times a day. And hearing her tell her story, it was the first time this woman could look at those people and say to them what they did to her was wrong. And let me tell you, I don't know what hit me, but for some reason, I knew I was going to be working this in some capacity for the rest of my life. It changed me as a human being.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure that had a huge impact. So once you left HSI, because when you were at HSI, you were responsible, right, for helping to put these traffickers away,
Right.
right? Okay.
Yes.
And so then once you retired and you left, you started Quest to Freedom. And in your mind, when you started Quest to Freedom, what did you think, or what type of impact did you think that it would have? What was like your goal?
So the funny thing was, I bought the domain Quest to Freedom when I retired with some plans to do something that I had no idea what I was going to do. So the first 6 months, I worked for an organization called Erase Child Trafficking, where we traveled around the country educating law enforcement departments on human trafficking. And then I had this amazing opportunity. I did 2 years as team security for the Atlanta Hawks, which was an amazing experience. It took, and I didn't realize this to now that I needed that break. Remember, I had been working human trafficking for 8 years and didn't realize all the secondary traumas I was receiving. So it was a break. I never left human trafficking because I was still doing trainings with Erase Child Trafficking, but through Zoom. But when I did 2 years with the Hawks, it was a great experience, but it really wasn't feeding my soul. And I told the Hawks I wouldn't be coming back for a third season. And I'm telling you, the work that I do, the whole thing with Quest, it's a spiritual movement for me because when I left the Hawks, the state of Georgia got funding for human trafficking, and I became the first human trafficking coordinator for the state of Georgia. Um, it was during COVID. We were doing some great things, building new policies and connecting, the 159 counties that Georgia has to get us all under this one umbrella to educate law enforcement, train communities to address this issue. But it was something about being in Georgia during COVID. I wanted to be back home in Miami. So I did my 1 year, gave me a lot of experience from that state level. I worked for the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, which is an executive branch of the governor's office, and they deal with all crimes. I don't know how my boss did her job, but she was the managing coordinator for human trafficking, sexual assault, and domestic violence. And each of those areas had their own perspective coordinator. And yeah, we did some great stuff. So after I left and came back to Miami, I I got asked to be the vice chair of the Miami-Dade Human Trafficking Coalition, which it reintroduced me to the community, new people. People were happy I was back. I did a lot of work in this community, so it was great to be back, to be accepted. And I'm gonna try to speed this up. So that was August of 2021. April of 2022, I heard this story about a father who took his 15-year-old daughter to a Dallas Mavericks game. And she went to the bathroom, and the next time he saw his daughter was 10 days later when they were rescuing her from a hotel being sold for sex in Oklahoma. I started reaching out to my NBA contacts to ask did they know about the story. Some did, some didn't. But then in September of 2022, the NBA decided to have their security conference. Every year before the season start, they have a security conference, and they had it in Miami, and they asked me to do a presentation on human trafficking. That story and that connection kind of like started refocusing me what I'm going to do. And so what happened November of 2022, I finally did my work. The trauma
But
that I brought on the job. Go ahead.
so I'm going to ask you a question. So
Mhm.
so now it kind of, this Quest of Freedom domain that you had already, got,
Ah,
that
yeah,
you didn't know what
yeah,
you were going to do with,
right.
now you were able to kind of hone that in and bring it into actually what you wanted to do from seeing all these different instances out there in the world, right?
Right,
Of what we don't really think about, right?
right,
Because
right,
we don't really think about our daughters at a basketball game simply going to the restroom and not coming back home,
right,
right?
right.
So I understand that first of all, let's get into this. So let's tell the world, what is the definition of human trafficking? Exactly what is it?
Yeah, and I know we only have an hour because I talk 2 hours, but I
Yes,
think it's so
you can talk all
important.
day about this, I know.
I know, but I think it's so important to clear this one point because this is what really focused me. In November, I started to do my own work to clear my own traumas from the work I had been seeing
Mhm.
and doing. And then that's what gave me the focus. Once I started doing my work, and that was 20 November 2022, January of 2023, I knew exactly what Quest of Freedom was supposed to do,
Nice.
right? And that's what focused me once I started doing my work. And the work really became, how do we help victims in emergency transitional services that we offer? And what that's about is, I can remember as an agent, we would have victims, we would pull them out of situations, and these victims trusted us to help them. But when we got to the office, there were no services. There was no social, there was no shelter. We were putting women in domestic violence shelter, which that's not a good mix. And it just changed. And so basically what we do at Quest of Freedom is educate people on the culture, because I teach from a passion of my lived experience, not as a victim, but learning and working with victims that changed me. But our most important work that we do is that we provide services for victims in emergency situations. When law enforcement don't have a shelter or anywhere to put them, they can contact us, and we're going to get that victim a hotel room. We're going to get that victim an Uber ride. And if home is really safe, we'll get that victim back home. And that is the three boxes, that we live in: education, helping victims, and strategic partnerships.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, I want to go back. Tell me
Yeah.
what human trafficking is. So tell the
Right.
world,
Thank you.
because a lot of people don't know the
Yeah.
actual what that means. So
Right.
what does it mean to human traffic?
So when you look at the Trafficking Victims Act, Prevention Act of 2000, that was the first time we got our laws, and described what human trafficking is. It has words like harboring, transporting, all that kind of stuff. But the three main keys in a human trafficking case are the three elements of force, coercion, and fraud. Coercion, and you don't need all three elements. You need one of these three elements. Force is obviously, I beat you to make you do what I want you to do. Coercion is the threat of hurting you, a family member, taking something of value, like, I'm gonna kick you out the house. I'm not gonna feed you. Coercion. And then fraud being the weakest of the three. Come to Miami, be a model. You get here, but they really want you in the room giving massages with happy endings, right? So that you need one of those three elements to have a human trafficking case. And the last thing I would say about that, those elements only apply to adults. If you're a child under the age of 18, I don't need any of those elements. So when we talk about culture, how that plays a part, we're in 26 years now of our TVPA being created, and there are places that are still arresting kids for prostitution. In the year 2000, it was no such thing at that moment of child prostitution. But it took this country a long time to adjust to that. And it took Florida 16 years to finally pass the law that says no more arresting kids for prostitution. And it took the state of Georgia 19 years.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
That's
And it
wild. And
and
that's
it
part of
goes
the
to
that was
go
part
ahead.
of the education piece too, right? Because
Right.
going into police departments and fire departments and EMS and things like that, and educating them on being able to look for and understand what is
Right.
human trafficking versus, like you said, prostitution or stuff like that, right?
Right. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
so difficult. And that was the big thing. Like, why aren't people seeing this? Why aren't our leaders, government, our elected officials, why aren't they seeing this? Because it was so embedded into our culture. We seen it. It was part of our culture. Prostitution, pimping. We
Right.
joke about it. We laugh about it unless you're living it. And
Hmm.
that makes a difference. And it was just difficult. And we still deal with some of these things of how our elected officials that create laws are not seeing things to make this easier and better for us to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Okay. So, w with me being on in the immigration, side of all of this, right?
Hmm.
Even my firm, we do T visas,
Right.
and T visas are called they're for trafficking. They're
Trafficking. Yep.
ways for undocumented immigrants to get a green card, be able to stay legally in the United States if they experience this type of trauma, this type of, ways that they got here in the US and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, Tell us, so let's do some statistics. Because Vic, I know
Hmm.
you're very knowledgeable on the whole statistics and what's happening. Um, I know that it's hard to pinpoint exactly how many people are trafficked in the world because it all has to be based off of, right, somebody notifying, right, somebody calling a 1-800 number, documenting and things like that. But what are
Hmm.
they saying about how many people are trafficked in the world, or even just in Florida or Georgia, because those are high volume trafficking areas because of the airports, right? And
Okay.
things like that.
Yeah. And before I go there, I think it's important that we talk about the types of trafficking, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody thinks about trafficking in the sex trafficking,
I was
right?
gonna get to that, but yes, I'll let you.
Yeah. Because I think that question would be easier answered, just understanding the types of
Mhm.
trafficking, right? So there's sex trafficking, obviously. There's labor trafficking, which is 60 to 70% of most trafficking. And that's where it involves us all.
Mhm.
You got servitude, debt bondage, and you have organ trafficking. But we just going to stick in the areas of sex and labor. And so when we talk about worldwide, we're talking $236 billion industry. We're talking 49.6 million people. The United States is one of the leading countries. Florida is number 3 in the country, and Georgia is number 4. And so you got California, Texas, Florida, Georgia. And the one thing that those 4 states have in common is agriculture. They're huge agriculture states.
Mhm.
And that's where you get a lot of the labor
The
trafficking,
labor. Yep.
right? So when people say to me, I've had friends say to me, Vic, why do I need to know about human trafficking? Because I don't go to strip clubs and I don't buy sex workers. I'm like, well, do you have a cell phone? Yep. Do you buy clothes? Yep. Do you have the ability to buy food? Yep. Well, we, and I'm including myself, have a minimum of 40 to 60 slaves working for us. And that's mainly coming from the labor side of trafficking. The minerals that goes into our phone, the cobalt that goes into our phones that make that work is a mineral dug out of the Congo in Africa. And these minerals are dug up with families on their hands and knees for maybe $1 a week or a month. And so we don't know this stuff, right? And so everybody that has a phone that can buy food, that can buy clothes, don't buy drugs because right now there's this thing. Is drugs the number one crime or human trafficking? Human trafficking clearly is the number one crime in the world.
Yeah, because with labor, and that's what we don't talk about, right? So with labor, people are working for way below minimum wage,
Yep.
not getting breaks, having to pay back, maybe housing and things like that while
Yep.
they're working. They have to work to pay all of that back.
Yep.
Not being fed for lunches and all of that type of stuff. And all of that is considered labor trafficking. And
Yeah.
and that's right up under our nose, right? Like that's
Every day. Every
right.
day. Restaurants, hotels. I mean, construction.
And yeah.
you know so and so the thing is that even forced to have sex, because they don't want to be turned over to Homeland Security.
Mhm.
And so, it's going to be interesting, and not to make this a political show, that, people going, we want all these illegal immigrants out of our country. Well, you know what? Those people pay a lot of money. They may not pay, when every time they go to a store, they pay taxes. They pay
Mhm.
billions into our economy. And so it's going to be interesting with what's happening right now, when it's going to stop and start to affect the economy. And everybody's going to be waking up like, wait a minute, this is not what we wanted.
Exactly, because who is the person that's working in all of these fields? Who are the ones that are actually making it so that we, do have maybe food at a restaurant, or do have, like you said, a cell phone or clothes to put on our backs or something like that. So, and let me tell you, one thing about my show is we don't even care about talking politics, because we tell it like it is, and everybody knows how strongly I feel about what is
Yeah,
going on right now, because this is not the, the world that I imagined. You know what I'm saying? So
we're definitely in uncharted waters right now.
we are definitely in uncharted waters. So let's say if you let's start talking about our kids, okay?
Mhm.
Because that story of that little girl in the basketball game really got to me, because that's something that I wouldn't even have thought about.
Yeah,
So for parents, okay, who have, teenage girls and things like that, because you're huge on the education piece, how do you educate families to monitor, or to kind of be on the lookout, or be aware of this being a possibility?
great question. But one thing I want to add to that is not just girls, it's boys.
Boys
There's a
too. Yes, it is.
very high number of boys being trafficked. So
Yep.
when I get to talk to parents, this being Human Trafficking Awareness Month, for the last 3 weeks, every night, as you know, on our chat, I've been everywhere doing all kind of stuff, and I love
Nonstop.
it. Yeah. And so when I'm talking to parents, the first thing I tell parents, you are 100% responsible for creating a safe space that your kids can come talk to you about any and everything. And
Hmm.
I go, parents, you must deal with your traumas. Because I read something the other day. If you're not dealing with your traumas, your kids will. And how does that, and creating that communication space, understanding your traumas, our kids can trigger us and create this, like, our reaction, yelling, screaming, maybe even beating them, because they're triggering us, because we haven't dealt with that unhealed trauma within ourselves. So first of all, if they're triggering us and we're creating that relate, we're not going to create that relationship that your child can feel safe to come talk to you. Because think about it, if your child cannot come talk to you, who do they go to? And there's a lot of times these kids are finding out, I'm not going to age you, but in my day, our parents didn't talk to us about sex and things like that. We had to figure this stuff out, which is very dangerous. Parents, don't be giving your kids body parts funny names, choo-choo train, channels, all this stuff. Because if you do that, if they ever have an issue of being sexually assaulted, you just gave the defense an out. You see, Your Honor, I was playing with his choo-choo train. I wasn't touching. So parents, be honest with your kids. We live in a different world right now. And finally, I would say to this: you own that phone. You own that phone. You let your child
And
know that they're
tablet and computer
yeah.
and
I'm gonna tell you, the phone is a very dangerous drug, and I'm part of that problem sometimes. Sometimes I'm on my phone too much. And if I'm on my phone too much, imagining what and I'm doing healthy stuff. I'm looking for good messaging and how to feed and help. But there's so much out there. And I'm like, parents, when you give your son or your child an iPhone without any regulations or following, you just gave billions of people access to your child you know and these games, roadblocks, all of this is the number one way that traffickers are reaching our children. And just the other day, I was with the junior league in Fort Lauderdale, and I was one of the partners that I work with. Her name is Sienna Martinez, who was a trafficking victim at 11 years old or 14. And and because her parents were going through a divorce, they really lost contact with her. She was kind of like, she had siblings, but they were doing their own thing, and she was kind of like left alone. And she
Mhm.
ended up online and being groomed online, and yeah, she was going out meeting people, leaving school. Parents didn't even know, meeting men and having sex with them and not even knowing. And so I love talking to her because she's 19. She's 5, 6 years from her trafficking. And she really connects with children when we do kids, when, talk to kids about this.
Mhm. Wow, yeah,
And
that's
and and I
definitely
was gonna say,
eye-opening.
yeah, so and then lastly, I tell parents, what are you teaching your kids about love? And they go, what are you talking about? I'm saying, well, my thing is love is actually, I usually do this test like when I'm speaking and I tell people I found the answer to all the world's problems. And everybody's like, what? What is that? And my thing is self-love. Self-love is the answer to all problems. Because when you love yourself to a level, now you can really give love. When you
Mhm.
love yourself, now when somebody's trying to love you, you know what that looks like. And giving a kid a sense of self-love takes away a lot of those vulnerabilities that make them a target for traffickers. Because understand, families, when you create trauma in your home, unresolved trauma creates the vulnerability. Traffickers and trafficking victims come from the same families all around the world.
Mhm.
They're dealing with the same traumas, but some come out to be a predator, some come out to be a victim. And so it's so important what's happening at home. It's so important that families redial, do some family therapy together, heal together. Because, and it ain't, what your parents gave you, they gave you what their parents gave. And we all believe, well, I'm okay, but are we really okay? And we
Right.
live in a different
Right. I
world.
don't have no
Technology,
traumas, I wasn't beat. I wasn't, exactly. But when you
you
start
know,
really working on yourself, yeah, you can definitely realize the little things are
yeah,
traumatic for a kid. And so when you
yeah.
grow up, yeah.
And I would just end on the thing with love. I grew up thinking love was about the chemistry I had with someone. And I think a lot of people still stick in there. You
Mhm.
meet someone, you got this strong chemistry, and you're like, oh my God, I love you. And then that plays out to a plateau, and all of a sudden you go on a business trip and you meet somebody else with that same energy, like, oh my God, I think I love you. Love is not about that energy. It's just energy. Love is about what we do, how we treat each other, how we speak to each other, even when you may feel like you don't deserve it. Love is, giving somebody grace at their lowest point. And love is giving yourself that. You got to give yourself that to even be able to give it to somebody else. So we got to reframe what love is. We use that word like it doesn't mean anything. But
Something that definitely we could use right now in the world.
when you give your kid a strong love, now that kid goes to school. I don't need to belong to the cool group of kids. I don't care these kids laughing at me because of my clothes, because I know who I am. I
Mhm.
can go against the grain and stand on that island when everybody's going like, because the bully is the most hurting kid in the school. But because of size and because of maybe gift the gab, they pick on your kids. And I tell parents, I like, if you understand the pain that the bully is going through, he's a hurt or she's a hurt person. Hurt people hurt
Hurt
people.
people. Yep.
But my thing where I've evolved to, because I do a course in emotional intelligence, I evolved to understand we got people dying over words. We all have the rights to protect ourselves if someone attacks us physically. But we're so insecure with ourselves, we're letting somebody's hurt words hurt us. We need a regrouping, a reframing. They're words and
Exactly.
they're coming from hurt people. And once we understand that, it gives us power because your superpower is how you manage your emotions. It's about you manage your emotions. If you can manage
Absolutely.
your emotions, you're ahead of the game. And I manage my emotions a lot in this traffic in Miami, and I know how the traffic is in Atlanta. So Practice there.
Yeah, okay. So we went to a whole different, stage show thing, all about love. But that is so true though, because that is, I mean, that's definitely what the world is missing right now, if you think about it. But something that I wanted to touch base on that I don't think a lot of people know about is one of the forms of trafficking is bondage, like servitude. Okay.
Yeah,
And I have experienced, with clients where, they get married or they have a boyfriend or something like that, and they are on their hands and knees, washing floors and cooking and cleaning, and they're not allowed to go visit family, friends. Nobody's allowed to talk to them, things like that. And people don't know about this
yeah.
because they're just thinking, oh, the person is just, maybe recluse and they love her, she or he, whatever, loves their spouse and they don't want to leave the house. How prevalent is that in here in the US?
Servitude is huge, and what does that look like? So I've seen cases, and I would ask audience, how long would it take you to make a phone call if you saw a kid living next door? You never saw the kid on the playground, never saw the kid at the bus stop, but you saw the kid working. How long would that bother you before you say something's not right there? How long would it take you to make a call if you saw an elderly person always working on your neighbor's house doing things? And then you see the person taking showers in the backyard and you thinking, well, maybe she worked dirty, didn't want to track the dirt in the house. How long would it take you to make that call? Because that's what's happening. Um, you have people come over here to bring people over here to work. And the first thing a trafficker, whether it's sex, debt bondage, or even labor, the first thing they're going to do is take your ID. Because when they take your passport or your driver's license, you can't get on a bus, plane, or train. You can't apply for another job. So you're isolated and you're trapped. Especially these things happen to people like labor trafficking, debt bondage, and servitude usually happen to people that are coming here from another country, that are here undocumented, so they don't feel like they have rights. And so even when you had talked a question about T visa and all of that, I like to educate people, especially in Miami, and I tell people, if you don't know already, you're going to know someone that's undocumented. And the question is, does those people know they have rights when they're worked extra hours without the pay, when they're forced to have sex with their boss, all this stuff out of the threat of being turned over to Homeland Security? Well, if law enforcement recognizes you as a victim of any of this and you're undocumented, you get continuing presence. And I know you do this a lot, and sometimes I get crazy answers on that. But once you get recognized with continuing present by law enforcement, you qualify for a T visa. And I know sometimes people go through try to get the T visa without continuing presence. And maybe you could correct me. I do believe even with a T visa, you need some type of law enforcement or somebody to recognize you as a victim, because anybody can say I'm a victim just to get a
Mhm.
T visa. So you still need that certification of law enforcement or somebody recognizing you as a victim before it gets signed off.
Yeah, there's some cases where there is exceptions.
Yeah,
Um, there are some cases where there's exceptions, but yeah, you have to be here in the US on behalf of like your trafficker. Like, how did you get here? Oh, you were promised maybe a perfect job, or you were promised, room and board and education and things like that. And of course, you get here and then you're either working in the fields where you're not getting paid, or you get
right,
here and you're in a brothel somewhere not knowing, what's going on.
right.
That type of thing. So yeah, it all depends. Or it could be, like I said, a boyfriend or, a girlfriend or whatever who brings you here. And now you are cooking and cleaning and watching their children and, on your hands and knees. And these are people in our neighborhoods, like right next door.
Yes,
And it's
yeah,
up to us as a collective, as a community, to keep our eyes open. Like, it's people want to be like, oh, well, I don't see anything, or I don't want to see anything or anything. But what
right.
if that was, like you said, your grandmother? Or what if that was, your son or something like that? It's like these people belong to somebody's family.
Yeah,
And we have to be aware of what is around us and want to step up and make a call. And even if you make a call, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to come down to your house and be like, "Oh, but you just called and what was going
Right,
on?"
right, right,
And the other,
right.
it can be totally anonymous. Um, but that's the most important part is the education. And we all have, because this involves all of us. This is
Ex-
not
Yeah,
distant
exactly,
from any of
exactly.
us, and that's what we have to be aware of. So, what I want for you to tell everyone is what number, okay, or I know there's a national hotline
Hmm.
that people can call when they suspect something is going on, and that's something that you can just pick up the phone and dial, right? You don't have to say, "Hey, I'm Melanie LaGrone and I live at da 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 da," right?
Yeah.
So what's that national number for people to be able to call? And then how else can we, like, I guess, help as a community? What would be your suggestion when you're talking to families, when you're talking to organizations, when you're talking to police departments and hospitals and things like that? What is our responsibility? Like, what can we do?
So, so I totally agree. This is the number one crime in the world. We've already established that we're all involved. U.S. is one of the leading countries in the world. We have a national hotline that is used to be run by an organization called PolarisProject.org. They're still available. I mean, they're still doing work in this space, but they're not. They monitor our human trafficking hotline for 20 years. They started it. Get a new administration, things change, and right now there's a company, an organization called Compass that is running our national hotline that I'm trying to arrange with another group of people, a meeting with them to understand if anything's changed. The number for the national hotline is 888-3737-888. Now, that may sound weird, but I do it that way because it sounds easy. So it's 888-373-7888. But I give it 888-373-7888, right? Just to make it easier, right? Um, and that's the national hotline. Now, the problems that we've had with the national hotline is that you make that call, you could be on that line for 20, 30 minutes before somebody finally pick up. They have a text, that you can also text. But the thing is that know what's happening in your state. Like I know in Florida, we have a national hotline now for the state, but I'm in Miami. I even have a local hotline to the
Mm,
Miami State Attorney's Office, who has their own trafficking task force. So know what's happening in your state. I know Georgia, when we were there, one of the proud things that I left, I know, I'm trying to remember, but you can Google Georgia's human trafficking hotline, and I know I forget the first three numbers, but it's NHT. And I was trying to, like, this is great for every state. If every state had, you know, whatever the number is, NHT Florida,
mm,
NHTGA, and that's the number, NHTGA. That is the number. So whatever that comes out to, that would be your local number for Georgia. Because if you call the national hotline, the first thing the national hotline is going to do is call that number to try to find help. And what I love what we did in Georgia, that hotline for Georgia gives victims options, or people options, because not all the time a victim wants law enforcement involved.
mm,
So if you call that number, it's a prompt. If you want LE, which is you know, your state guys, what are they called? The state GBI. GBI is the lead law enforcement for trafficking for the state.
mhm,
So it goes to them. If you want law enforcement, you hit one, it goes to the GBI hotline. If you're a child, you hit two, and it goes to another hotline that deals with children. And if you're an adult, it's another line that goes to adult. And if you're a labor trafficking victim, is a line for that. I love this because every situation may be different, and I love that it gives everybody option. I would love to see that nationally. I think we did a great job coming up with that number and giving those prompts. I mean, Florida and Georgia, from just what I know because I work, they are two leading states that really works hard in addressing this issue for their communities.
Yeah.
So the hotline, look for your local hotline. There may be one that you can call right away and get help. And you always got 911. Remember that. You always got 911. The problem with calling 911 is unless officers that are part of a human trafficking task force, they may show up and not know what the heck is going on. Because one of the things that we're advocating for from Quest to Freedom is that human trafficking be put on police reports all around the country. Why? Because when that happens, you're going to get better numbers in your community, what's going on, and you force all law enforcement to know the basics, force, fraud, or coercion. So if I know the basic element and I'm questioning someone, now I'm looking for, is this force? Was this coercion? Was this fraud? Because I got a couple of articles that I could share with you that's heartbreaking that a young woman here in Miami died. And I'm not blaming the police, but they did not do the right things. They did not know what they were doing. They have a human trafficking task force that they could have called and resolved everything, but these officers probably never had that training, you
Right.
know?
And that's why education and awareness and all of that is so important. Like we need organizations like yours that are actually going out there and getting in front of these departments and organizations and these city council members and things like that so that they are aware. Definitely. So
And
if
I say not just go and give them the ABCs. This is why I talk from a cultural aspect
yeah,
because before you so one of the things that we were doing my PowerPoint, one of the questions that I would ask people in the audience, who dressed up for Halloween? Everybody raises their hand. And I go, okay, whoever dressed up as a pimp or a hoe or attended a pimps and hoe party. Now you get a little bit like, no. The next slide is me in a pimp outfit before I knew what was going on. That means we've been glorifying this. Tom Hanks had a movie years ago, Bachelor Party. And you
mhm,
got the pimp walking in the room. Where are my hoes? I want my bees back. And then Tay Diggs and those guys did that movie, Best Man, when he got beat up by his boy at the bachelor party that showed up with a pimp.
yeah,
We are glorifying this. So a young man watching that stuff, oh, this is a cultural thing that we do. I can't wait to get. I'm gonna have a bachelor party. I've been down those roads. Knowing what I know now, I'll go to a bachelor party, but if you got girls coming, that's when I check out.
yeah, yeah.
Because I
And that's
don't know if
something that
those
every
girls want to be there or they're being forced to be there. And that's the difference.
exactly, exactly. And that's where the awareness comes in. Everybody has to think about this and be aware of their surroundings, aware of the people, aware of things that we do, every day, to, like you said, but possibly glorify this and not even think about what you're doing.
Right.
So for anybody who is out there and this is for anybody, okay? Anybody who feels like they are experiencing this type of issue, I'm gonna say, all
Yeah.
right? Whether you be male, female, young kid, whatever, please seek help, all right? You have to talk to somebody, call somebody, because this isn't normal, and you might have been experiencing it too as it being normal, but it's not, and it's something that everyone is now becoming more aware of. Law enforcement, parents, organizations, things like that. So just reach out to somebody if you are ever put in this position, or you even think that you might be in this position, right? You might think, okay, something's strange, but I really don't know. But call somebody to find out. If you are an immigrant, if you are undocumented, if even, if you came here and you're experiencing anything like that from another country, you were brought here from another country and you think that you're experiencing anything like that, please reach out to a knowledgeable immigration attorney. And you all know what I say all the time. I don't care if you reach out to me. This is not a plug for me or LaGrone Law. This is a plug for reaching out and getting help from any knowledgeable immigration attorney and figuring out your options.
And
So,
Mel, can I plug
final
something
last
real
words.
quick?
Exactly. I was going to say, Vic, what
Yeah.
would be your final last words?
So to your point, they can go to questofreedom.org. And on our website, there is an app called Ruth. Now, if you want to go to Ruth directly, you can go to PARASOL cooperative, parasolcooperative.org, and the Ruth icon will pop up. Ruth is an AI bot that was put together by victims of sexual assault and human trafficking. It's going to ask you, are you okay? It's going to ask you your age and where you are. It's in 85 languages. You can tell Ruth anything, any problems, sexual assault, rape, whatever you got to ask Ruth. Ruth, one thing it's going to do is provide you some resources in your area to deal with this, because you're not alone, people. Whatever you experience, you're not the first, you're not the last. But if you understand what's going on, center yourself, make some calls to some people that can help, you'll get through it. And the one thing why you'll get through it, because you're going to help other people get through it. Don't feel alone, because you're not.
Yes,
Because this
absolutely.
is a isolating crime. I mean, isolating you from your friends. You're in a relationship and they're trying to tell you, don't hang out with your friends, don't hang out with your family. These are all red flags that you should be aware of. Because once you're isolated in a box, who gets to take care of you and look out for you?
Hey, Vic, we got a question from the audience. What about
Mhm.
businesses? Do
Yes.
businesses like restaurants and airlines and things like that, do they have any signage up, or do they have a responsibility to have any sort of signage?
Listen, I love that question, because if you're doing business with a company that doesn't have a ESG program, that's environment, social, and governing program, you might want to recheck yourself, because you don't want to be doing business with somebody, then later on an investigation and happen and you find out that they're dumping oil in the water, or they're using little kids to make your shirts, right? So businesses have a good ESG program. That means you have to educate yourselves on these issues to make sure that you're not hiring people. Have good hiring, practicing, have good plans for your people, someone that they can talk to. Businesses play a huge part. And this is why. This is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. Next month, tomorrow, all these businesses are going to be waving flag for Black History Month. All these companies are going to be waving flags for Latin heritage and cancer. Why not human trafficking? Why people don't know? Because a lot of times from the moment a product is made and we buy it, they have these issues.
And what about to just even walking into a business? Like walking into a business, a restaurant, and going into the bathroom or something like that. Do you ever see that they have signs? I know I've seen it in the airports
Right,
before.
right.
I've definitely seen it in the airports when I've gone to the restrooms in the airports. You know,
Yeah,
I travel a lot, so I go to a lot of restrooms.
right.
But what about like restaurants and other type of businesses? Should we take it upon ourselves, like if we own a business, to have a sign, a quick trip, a racetrack, any of those?
So Florida passed a signage law in 2015 that they're not enforcing yet. And so in all hospitality and medical facilities, it should be a sign in the labor. And what we do in Florida in English, Spanish, and Creole, because that makes up the majority
Yeah.
of our population, it needs to be somewhere where your patrons can see it. So a lot of times they either put it in the back of a bathroom door or the back of a bathroom stall. And you
Mhm.
need a copy in the employee section to guard from labor trafficking. But when I was working in Georgia, we were trying to get some of these laws passed. We got laws that doctors and nurses got to learn about human trafficking, because we know 80% of victims have gone to emergency rooms and they have not been identified for trafficking because nobody is trained, you know. So
So we need
businesses
more
can,
policies, right?
yeah,
So we have to
exactly.
have more, okay, so
Exactly.
people call your Congress people, write letters, like all of this type of stuff we could, because we have to see more policies involved in order to get the word out there.
And that's parasolcooperative.org.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah,
Let
put
me,
the cooperative in there.
PARA,
PARASOLCOOPERATIV.org.
COOPERATIV,
ERT
okay, .org.
dot org.
Okay, so it's
Cooperative
Parasol
Parasol the
Cooperative.org.
cooperative.org. Yes.
Okay, all right. I think I got that properly in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So, Vic, they can find you at questtofreedom.org,
Yep.
right?
Questofreedom.org or Q2F.org.
Okay, and if anybody is in the Miami area, there are so many organizations around here, and you probably will see Mr. Williams speaking at an organization every single day of the
Well,
week.
look, I'm national. If you want to pay for me to come to Georgia, you want to pay for me to come speak to your audience or whatever you have, let me know. I'm this is my passion. You know, the
Yeah,
one thing when I started doing my work, I realized this is my purpose in life. And my message is self-love. That's what I do,
I
as you
love
know,
it.
Mel.
I love it. Yes, I do. I do. So yeah, so if there's any businesses or organizations anywhere, all right, Mr. Williams will come and speak to your staff and speak to your organization and the heads of your organizations and things like that to educate you all. As far as on the immigration end, you all know I am attorney Mel LaGrone. I am the CEO and founder of LaGrone Law. We are an immigration and criminal defense firm with offices in Atlanta, Georgia, and St. Thomas, the U.S. Virgin Islands. If you need us at all, you can always go to our website, www.lagronelaw.com. You can reach out to us via phone, 678-250-5449. If you're on the islands, you can reach us at 340-626-0778. And we are all over social media at LaGrone Law. I want to thank everyone so much for joining us. I want to thank Mr. Victor Williams from Quest to Freedom for coming and educating us on human trafficking, ways to look at it, awareness, and everything involving that. And we will see you guys next month.
Thank you, Mel. Appreciate you.
You're
And you're a
welcome.
strategic partner of Quest to Freedom.
Yes, and my strategic partner. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.